So welcome everybody to the June, wow, is it June already? The June meeting of the Miami Pioneers and Natives of Dade. Today we're going to be talking about a little spot that's been a bit of a mystery. I've noticed for some years when driving around the Redland area, when looking at maps, of seeing the name of Aladdin City, and you drive by, there's no city. So I mean, it's been a bit of a mystery and enigma that we dug into a little bit and discovered what really was going on with Aladdin City. And this was in the era when Hollywood, Coral Gables, when a lot of grand plans were in action of turning what was really a pioneer wilderness into a civilized place and attracting people to come here. And Aladdin City had a wonderful plan, and it looked great on paper, literally. And so, but then, you know, things happened, like the hurricane of September 26th and the Great Depression. And so it's a great example of the best laid plans not quite working out as they might have. So if you will, I'll be starting the presentation in just a second here. If the technology works, you should see the first screen come up.
Sign that says this meeting is being recorded?
Yes. Yeah, we record the meeting so that later on, people that weren't able to join us can you know, watch the presentation. So here is my little presentation. Thanks to Jorge and some of our friends for helping out with some of the components. And this is the forgotten history of Aladdin City. Well, if you look at your Google Maps, you will see a label of Aladdin City. It doesn't look like there's much there. There's a few farms around. It's mostly agricultural land. There's a few homes. And so what is the deal with Aladdin City? We're going to talk about the company and the concept that they had for building homes in a day, and the actual place that was going to be Aladdin City, and then eventually the demise. And then we'll look at some photos of what it looks like today. So Aladdin City starts with the Aladdin Company of Bay City, Michigan. They were a very established company in the area. They had a concept like Sears did, if you remember. You could order a home and have it delivered to you, and then you put it together. All the parts would come labeled and pre-fabricated, if you will. And that's what the Aladdin Company of Bay City, Michigan was known for. Mail order kit homes. So the two brothers, Otto and William Sovereign, they were quite prominent in their community, and their concept was well themed and very successful. And that is that they had large factories that would prepare all of the parts for you for your home. And they sold over 75,000 homes. And, you know, believe it or not, when you drive around and you look at some of these original bungalows and stuff, these were pre-made homes, or in some cases plans that you'd buy for $25 and build them yourself. So these guys were the kings of prefabricated housing from 1906 up until recently. So their concept was to, of course, they sold homes and they helped communities build. And this was going to be their own community that they were going to design in a sort of a Persian style. And they had found a location out in the middle of, goodness knows, middle of nowhere back then. And so they began their plan in the 20s. And so here's an example of one of their factories, and you can just see it's right on the railroad track. It's extremely long buildings, and this would have been their sort of assembly line for building all of these parts of these homes. Eventually, by 1928, of course, the Depression took a lot of the business from them. And eventually they only did 1,000 homes a year, way down from their prime. Eventually in 1987, they did cease operations. And then in 2014, another company came along and bought the registered trademark. And we have yet to see what exactly they're going to do with it, but we know that prefabricated homes are once again a viable solution for many people. Okay, so the concept was that these guys had a catalog, and some people will remember that Sears had a catalog too that was very famous, and you could buy homes from Sears and they would ship it all to you. And this was especially important as people began to move into suburbs. So they made a lot of advancements in how well this could be done with their efficiencies, much like Henry Ford did with the Model T and his assembly line. Their success was in creating these assembly lines that could put together these kit homes. So one of the things that we see now is that when you look at homes architecturally, American homes, you'll see certain styles that are evident, and they were very much involved in making some of these styles popular, whereas before that everybody sort of built their own home in their own style. So here we can see the train car full of materials, and you can see what's loaded there: the siding and the window and door frames, and the garage door, and even down to the nails and the paint and the finishing, the roof rafters. It's all there, nicely packed into a train car. So here's an example of how they would start off. And of course, they were famous for claiming that they could build your house in a day. And the way they did that was by having all the parts ready and having a group of 20 or 30 tradesmen working together to put it all up. So first, they would start with the foundation, and then they would put up the framework, and then eventually finish off the roof and the interior walls. And theoretically, by the end of the first day, you would have a house that was painted and finished and ready to go. Now, if we go back to their early catalogs, they say that back to 1908, you can see that they started off with very simple projects. Here's what they called a Style G bungalow from their 1908 catalog. Very simple little house with a bit of a porch on the front. If you look at the layout here, a bedroom of 8 by 10 feet. I think a lot of us have a closet that's 8 by 10 feet. And so that's a pretty small bedroom, isn't it? Just big enough to get a bed in there, I suppose. And a living room and a simple porch. Now the porch is 6 by 30, and that's a pretty wide porch. Now here you look at the prices. The home, this isn't just for the plans. You bought the home for $98. If you went with the Plan B cottage style, it had the porch on the front. It cost you $20 more, and for another $8, you could get the Style B 20 by 20 foot, which was the whole cottage with the partition making 2 rooms. Here's the 5-room dwelling for $385. This is moving up in the world a bit, and you see homes like this all over the country. And now with the 2-story version here, the Style FM, they called it, $760. We're going up in price, aren't we? And this, I believe, in the 1908 catalog would have been their piece de resistance, the Newport, which certainly has some style to it, and accoutrements, a wraparound porch, and some nice architectural elements as well. Now, by the time we get to the actual placement of homes down here in South Florida, you can see in the 1925 catalog that the homes are really coming up in quality and design, including some more interesting finishes and textures and accoutrements. And of course, this was at a time when World War I had finished and the nation was back busy at getting things back to normal and living a happy suburban life. And I think this is what they were selling was a happy, charming homestead that you could live an all-American family life. The marigold, you see, that's very nice. You see homes like this all the time now. Now, your home is nothing without the fixture. So here we have, and I think it's interesting, if you value the prices, there's something about 100-to-1 ratio between what things cost now and what they cost back in 1925 in many cases. So you have a bathtub for $33. You have a water heater for $13. You've got the kitchen sink for $15.90, and the lavatory sink. It's really interesting. I thought it was funny that the toilet is called a closet. So I guess we don't use words like toilet in the printed materials. Now, along the way, say up into the 50s, now we're starting to get into the Leave It to Beaver era and more mid-century modern America. And the homes actually follow this progression, as you can see here. The Ventura, the Inglewood, a simple little bungalow style home. The San Diego Redwood, and with almost a Frank Lloyd Wright, sort of horizontal prairie home sort of theme. Okay, so let's talk about the place. Aladdin City originally had a grand plan. As you can see here, it has 400 acres with a nice circle. Actually, it's a double circle. It would have been the commercial area. And then you have these 45-degree boulevards that were 200 feet wide, these grand boulevards that would have been the main thoroughfares running through the area. And of course, the Otto and William Sovereign brought their Moorish style theme, as you probably well remember. So did Opalaka, and George Merrick had numerous different themes from different countries represented in Coral Gables. So their idea was to go with I guess the magical theme of Aladdin was very popular. And so here's an artist rendering of what would be Aladdin City. And you can see in the middle there is a nice center of town with commercial buildings sort of encircling that. And they envisioned 4,000 homes on 400 acres with a population of 10,000. Quite an audacious presentation. Now, as we said, the original circle was Alibaba Circle, oriented in a north-south axis. And the interior of the oval was going to be a large pool, a public park with a pool, and surrounded by Alicogia Circle, which was the larger circle that would encompass many of the commercial buildings. And of course, this was the commercial district in the middle. Now, at the southern tip, you had Hanlin Mill Drive, which of course is still there, and Redland Road, or Farm Life School Road, Farm Life School Road, 162nd Avenue, which would have been shown here as being interrupted by the circle, but now, of course, is not. And these 200-foot wide boulevards, Sovereign Boulevard, which the brothers handily named after themselves, and Aladdin Boulevard radiated through the area northwestern and northeastern at 45-degree angle. And of course, the streets had wonderful names: Damascus and Cairo, Hassan and Ali Khoja, and Mustafa Avenue, which ended at Aladdin Boulevard. North of Ali Khoja Circle ran Baghdad, Sinbag, Cafe, and Sahib streets in an east-west direction, and there is still remnants of those streets now today. So in December of 25, here's our timeline. The Sovereign brothers promoted the building of a dawn to dusk house on opening day, January 14th of 1926. They flew in all the materials for this building of this home from Fort Lauderdale and landed the airplanes right there on site. And this, of course, attracted a large crowd. And the Homestead newspaper at the time reported that hundreds of spectators gathered to watch the aircraft land, and a crew of 21 carpenters, plasterers, electricians, and plumbers, and cement workers put up the house. So it really must have been quite a thing to read about a company that could build a house in a day. So construction of the first house commenced at 7 a.m. and was finished at dark, complete with electricity, plumbing, sidewalks, and landscaping. Now we see these home fix-up shows today, are very popular on home garden television and such, but we don't see anybody building a house in a day. Okay, so then with this big push and the sort of proof of concept, they started laying out advertisements in the local papers, and they announced that they had sold on that first day 874 home sites. Now, to be fair, the lots were very small, and you would buy 2 or 3 or 4 lots for your home potentially. And so, but 874 home sites were sold on opening day. That's quite remarkable. And of course, the theme here of Aladdin and his lamp, floating over the town, I think was certainly got attention. And then advertisements, more and more came out. Here's an advertisement from the Miami Tribune of January 13th, 1926. And then again, a month later, February 13th, $250 down could build a home site in Aladdin City, to buy a home site, and certainly was designed to be affordable. Now, again, we're at the Miami Tribune now, March 15th, a little further on down the line, and we're inviting people to come out for a big day and see all the sites and have a tour and get an idea for themselves of what was going on. And these advertisements really caught the eye of a lot of people, and were very successful. So you could say that they had, I think, a very effective marketing campaign. And then there were other ads in the newspapers. Here's somebody selling land across the street from Aladdin City, which I guess now suddenly became valuable with all of the potential of Aladdin City to prosper. And the newspapers were writing stories about it, and I think they had a pretty good team that did marketing and public relations. Here's a story about how a train load full of houses was coming, and we saw that the property was located on the rail line very strategically, and of course all of their homes were bundled in train cars, and so that was a sort of a marriage made in heaven there for them. And here we see one of the manufacturing plants. I believe this one is at Bay City. Yeah, it says that. And so then they were planning to open another large manufacturing plant at the Aladdin City location in Redland to boost the commercial industrial base instantly. And of course, we talked about the Seaboard Railway coming through, and this would have given them tremendous connectivity, both for shipping all the homes and for people who lived there and wanted to visit to easily get themselves in and out of town. It was a pretty good drive out of Miami on what were just really the new roads in Dade County to get out there. The train station managed to stay around quite a bit. It was unique in that it was a wooden train station, and that made sense because Aladdin City was made of wooden homes and buildings, and so they would have designed themselves their own wooden train station. And the area became incorporated into the Redland district. It was the 9th community of Redland, organized by the Redland District Chamber of Commerce. And so the place in 26 began to come along, and an important event was the laying of the cornerstone of a one-story bank building of Persian design at the corner of Alibaba Circle and West Cairo Street. And who would predict of what was to come in the future and sort of ruin the entire plan? Yes, the great hurricane of September 18th, 1926 ruined a lot of people's plans and was a big setback for Aladdin City. Now, a number of homes and town hall and the Seaboard Extension railway station and more were actually built, but I think it was all but certain that that it was not going to reach its fruition goal. And by December of 1930, at the onset of the Depression, the Sovereign brothers conducted a raffle of 2 homes and 10 lots. I guess they were trying to just generate any publicity that they could. And the winners would have been from people who had already purchased homes, kit homes from them. Well, both of these winners were from the Northeast US, where they did most of their business. And they received round trip tickets to Aladdin City. Those would have been train tickets, I'm sure. And the whole operation was finally dissolved in 1936. And if you can imagine, South Florida in 1936 was just languishing from all of the destruction and all of the downturn of the economy. And so many people had bought property at high prices and were taking a soaking on it at that time. The train station, as I said, stuck around for a while. In the 1960s, it was turned into a potato packing house, being on an active railroad line there. A lot of the railroad traffic down in the Redland was packing house traffic. And it stayed around until 1985 and then was eventually torn down. Okay, what does Aladdin City look like today? Well, it doesn't look like much of a city, but you still see the bones of what was there. Here's what Google Maps shows us now for Aladdin City, and you can see the distinctive triangular area that would have been the western portion of the planned city. And if we overlay the concept of what would have been there, and with the circles, you can see what the plan would have been. And the train station, of course, was over there on the northwest, a very convenient location right off of Aladdin Boulevard. You see the Schoolhouse Road and Hanlin Mill Drive are still there, uninterrupted by the circle. And in effect, this is what's left of Aladdin City to this day. Some of the streets have retained their names. Some have just turned into Southwest 214th, 212th Street. And you would be hard pressed to figure out by looking at this now what would have been the original plan. Still, you have some remnants that would give you clues. The sign at the intersection of Alibaba Circle and Aladdin Boulevard, and the sign at the intersection of Baghdad Street and Aladdin Boulevard still remain active in those names. And going through Aladdin City, we met a nice gentleman named Robert Edge, who lives on the property at the front of what would have been Alibaba Circle. And his family bought the property in the 1950s, and he grew up here. And if you've traveled up on Schoolhouse on Redland Farm Life School Road, you would have seen this unique log cabin, which is really close to the Everglades RV park. It's really pretty, isn't it? Okay, so now here's what Aladdin Boulevard looks like. There's not much there. You can see how it could have been a 200-foot wide majestic boulevard. And a little bit of an aerial shot here shows that to the right, we would see Farm Life School Road. And this would have been at the bottom, the Alibaba Circle, and heading off into the middle of the photo was Aladdin Boulevard. And as we just look around the area, we can see now it's mostly nurseries, a few homes scattered about, and an awful lot of plants being grown, and a lot in shade and some out in the open. On the left, we can see at the bottom of the picture, we can see a current home, and in the middle left side, we can see 2 homes that are built in the area between Alibaba Circle, or down from Alibaba Circle off of Aladdin Boulevard. And just looking around, we can see that what you're looking at there in the center is a beautiful pine forest that was planted around a home there. And in the original plans, that would have been about 40 homes. And you can see there's 1 home there now. It's very nice. So looking around, there's a few homes. There's, you can see the swimming pool. You can see what looks like maybe a quarter-mile square of shade there from the nurseries in the area. A lot of trucks parked there. The nurseries are very active with shipping product to other states mostly, and to Canada and such. And the trucks are constantly moving product. You see the diagonal line over on the left to mid there. That's where the railroad track runs. It's still there. And now we're looking directly at the railroad track where that line of palms is. And the train station would have been near where you see the trucks parked there now. Lots of trucks, lots of plants. The massive scale of the nursery business in the Redland is really impressive. Well, thanks to Nancy Suits for inviting us over to her home in Aladdin City and showing us around, and to Robert Edge for sharing some stories of growing up in Aladdin City, and to our friend Hugh Hudson for those aerial photographs, and our friend and member Jorge Zaldivar for helping with locating those historic newspaper clippings. And that's the forgotten history of Aladdin City in a nutshell. Let's see if I can stop the share now. Okay, so there we are, a little place in the Redland that we've seen and never known anything about. A company that was very distinguished during its time, and then faltered, and another wonderful dream from the grand era of the 20s in South Florida that went bust. Has anybody come across or been out or visited Aladdin City? I know we have a few people that have been there and that live there. Any comments or questions? Jeff.
Brenda Webb lives there.
Oh, Linda Webb lives there. Okay.
Brenda
Brenda.
Webb.
I'm sorry.
That's the first wife of Ron Webb, Homestead Furniture.
Okay. Has that family been around a long time? Have they been there long? Do you know?
I believe they came here in the mid 40s. I'm not positive. I'm not sure, but they're, well, no, wait a minute. The Webbs came here earlier. I'm talking about Brenda. Brenda's maiden name is Y-O-U-N-T.
Okay.
The Webbs have been here since like 1920 or 22, maybe even earlier than that. Yeah.
Have you ever written anything about Aladdin City, Jeff?
No, it's just too daunting of a subject. You did a remarkable job, you and Jorge. I mean, that's just I'm really pleased, and I would like to get a copy of that for the Homestead Museum.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'll put the PDF up that or maybe we can print a version for you or something, whatever you.
No, we can get the actual video would be nice, because we have we've got a television there that people can watch these things on.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
and I believe that at some point the Sovereign Brothers donated a lot of their archives to University of Michigan or one of the school's historical departments. So there is some evidence of the old catalogs and newspaper clippings and stuff out there.
Sure, that's correct. I tracked that down for you, but I said that I don't know how in the world you would ever, you need to go there in person to access it. And it's like, I think I believe it's in Ann Arbor. They've got quite an extensive of material.
That sounds right.
But I don't know where you got all those plans and pictures and everything, but that's remarkable, because I mean, I've seen, mentions of Aladdin City over the years, but nothing in depth like you've done. You've done a remarkable job. That's really nice.
Yeah, and Jorge found those newspaper clippings, and I think that really gives a lot of insight into the way they were presenting it.
Oh yeah, Aladdin City was, Aladdin City. It was not by no means was it the only promotion. I mean, this area all over Miami, it was like this. It was just thumping the drum and getting people to buy homes. I mean, it was in Homestead, Florida City, Perrine, I mean, everywhere. Cutler, it was going on everywhere, so.
I think with that new spur of the railroad, they were looking at something that could have been absolutely fortunate. That, their business depended on the railway, and they had 400 acres on the railroad, and they had a blank slate, if you will, if you look at it that way, to
Well,
build. So it certainly had all of the potential, didn't it?
yes, but the point to bring up here is that Aladdin City was not isolated. You know, you had Eureka to the north, you had Silver Palm to the south, you had Goulds and Princeton to the east. So it was not, you know, and then of course you had the railroad. I've never written anything on the Seaboard Railroad either. That's a daunting subject. I wasn't aware that it had reached that point because it reached Homestead in 1928.
Yeah.
And the Seaboard Railroad Station in Homestead is still there. It's owned by Joyce Kucinich of Redland Auction, but it's never been restored. It's quite nice, but that's quite a project, you know. So nobody's written anything on the Seaboard Airline Railroad, and
and from what I understand, their big push was from Central Florida all the way down. I think they came through. They came down near what is 27, a lot of it, I think, and their push through to Homestead gave Flagler some competition, as I understand it.
No, they didn't come down 27. They came down the East Coast. They paralleled.
Did they come down the East Coast? I thought they came down Central Florida.
They came down they paralleled the Florida East Coast Railroad, and then they came to where Miami International Airport is, and then they headed southwest from there.
Right. I know they both had spurs that went into airport. Yeah.
There was no connection between the FEC and the Seaboard, though. I know that in Homestead, there's been people say that the Seaboard connected with the FEC, and that's not true. You know, the Seaboard was how Brooker Lumber got their lumber back in the day, but it dead ends right there at the railroad tracks. Frank would know something.
And I live only 3 houses from the railroad track, and you know, and it's not used anymore. Obviously, it bothers me that it's so overgrown. It's not maintained.
Seaboard did go up Central Florida. I remember taking the train to go to Avon Park.
Right.
So it goes into Central Florida further south, and it breaks off from the FEC tracks quite a ways inland, and diverts itself northwest and over to Sebring and Avon Park and further north.
Yeah, but it didn't come down around the lake and down 27.
No, I can't remember the exact area. It's probably easy enough to find on maps.
Yeah.
We get a railroad group involved, and they'll tell us exactly where.
Right. I have a question. In all your research, did you run across any 1926 hurricane pictures from Aladdin City? Were those frame homes, did they stand up to the hurricane winds or not?
I did not, and it's very unclear, in fact, how many homes were actually built, because I think between their big hurrah in January and when the hurricane hit in September, I don't think they really built out the place much.
I think
what happened was they just kind of the land value went to nothing basically, and people picked up those parcels and picked up lots of them. I mean, nobody was buying 25-foot parcels, you know. And as I was saying, I think the average home, you would have bought 4 parcels for a decent sized homestead, you know, 100 feet wide, you know. So nobody was buying, I don't think, 25-footers. But of course, there was planned for Aladdin Boulevard to be townhomes or connected homes, small, you know, something like I don't know, like connected townhouses or something like that, potentially for a higher you know, occupancy area versus the individual home sites out around. And they actually built the bank. I think they built the bank in City Hall, and you know, but it was over pretty quick from what it looks like. And
you know, like so much of, I mean, there is Parvenir and Homestead that, you know, it was a great, well-planned place, but as soon as the hurricane hit, the values of the property just went to zero, and nobody could get any money to fix up houses that had been damaged, and you know, so it was really a terrible mess.
When you look at the numbers, I remember in researching a piece I did on Coral Gables that land values in Coral Gables, as an example, were so high in the 20s that when the bust hit, those same land values didn't return to the same value until 1987. And so that's how high land prices were back then. Ridiculous. And then, of course, they went down pretty low. You could buy a home in Coral Gables. My grandparents bought a home for $15,000 in 1965 in Coral Gables. Think about that. You think of Coral Gables being, mega millions, but those little homes in the craft section were going for $15,000 in the mid 60s. And it wasn't until the 80s that the value of that same land reached what it would have been at the height of the boom. So interesting. Yeah, but this has been a bit of a mystery, and I think we were lucky to catch on to some clues. Now, part of what we discovered was that people out there who really study the Sears homes, there's a large group of people who live in a Sears home, and this is a sort of an offshoot of their interest of a competitor from Sears, Aladdin, who made similar mail order homes. And so there's a certain number of people out there who just who collect and research this unique American phenomena, perhaps, of mail order homes.
What's interesting too, talk about land values.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything with it yet, but I collect as I go through the newspapers, I collect delinquent tax lists. And I was just now, before this started, I was looking at the 1925 papers, and it's an entire page in the Homestead Leader of fine print of people who owned lots and owed taxes on the lots. And in like 80% of the cases, the owner is unknown.
Right.
They didn't even know who owned these lots. They just knew that somebody owned them and they owed taxes on them.
Yeah.
And that's
would that have been an opportunity for someone to buy the tax burden and then eventually?
Absolutely.
That's what the purpose is, to advertise that. Huh?
Yep.
So much of the property could have been picked up for pennies, basically.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened. James Satilli, who had South Dade Farms, that's how he accumulated a lot of his property from the Miami Land and Development Company. People just gave up, and the county issued tax certificates, and people bought them for pennies on the dollar. And then after a certain number of years, it became theirs. They issued a tax deed. So yeah.
I've got a map of the Seaboard Airline. It goes parallels the FEC up to West Palm Beach, and that's where it swerves to just north of the lake, and inland to Sebring is where it starts going back north in Avon Park.
Yeah, I remember taking the train to Avon Park.
Yeah.
Probably in the 60s.
Yeah, I did in the 50s.
But Frank, from West Palm Beach, it went down to Miami. It did not go around the lake and come down.
No. That's what I'm saying. Is it went from Homestead to Miami and straight up along the FEC area,
right?
Until it got to West Palm Beach.
Right.
Then it turned west and went just right on the edge of North Lake Okeechobee.
Okay.
And then it started turning north around Sebring.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then it was connected with the other railroad properties in Central Florida. I think what you had was Plant's Railroad ran southwest down to Tampa, didn't it?
Yes.
And of course, the FEC was all the way down the east coast of Florida. And then I think they did actually meet in Wildwood, didn't they? Wasn't there a junction in Wildwood between Plant and I'm not sure, but I think Wildwood was a
yeah, I think the Seaboard
for several railroad lines.
It met the Plant Railroad somewhere around in the middle there of the state.
Leesburg, Wildwood, something like that.
South of Gainesville, and yeah, I can see it on the map. They don't have cities marked on this particular one I've got.
I wanted to ask if anybody has actually ever lived in a home that was one of these mail order homes. We still see a few around. Has anybody ever lived in one? Apparently they were pretty well built, and like a lot of the Dade County pine homes, they did last through hurricanes pretty well.
I don't believe these were made out of Dade County pine, though. They came from Michigan.
No, but what I was saying was, like the Dade County pine homes, I think are sort of well known for having withstood a lot compared to, say, Country Village cardboard, stapled homes,
Well, I think many of us know from hurricane experience that it's kind of a lucky draw. So, you know, it's like the house next to you could be completely demolished and your house is fine, you know, so.
Absolutely right. And is Jorge with us? I thought I saw him in there somewhere. He did the research and found the ads and the newspaper articles. I think he was with us on his phone earlier, but I don't see him here now.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Wow. So,
Speak up.
so tell us about searching for the stuff and what you found in all of your research.
Right, this is one of those subdivisions. Like Jeff had said, that there were just so many of them. Which is the famous paper that has the 100 and something, 200 pages of advertisements?
What year? It'd be the Miami Daily News in 1926. It was a special edition and it was huge.
Right, so that's just a motivation to look for the like the full page ads, but in particular the stuff I sent you the second time, Rob, with the little articles with the reporters that were actually going there.
Yeah.
And you know, some of those are just little 2-inch pieces of a paper, you know, easy
Right.
easy to overlook.
Well, it was interesting. I did try to find someone who I did find Robert Edge, who lived there since the 50s. And I was trying to find somebody who might have grown up there. I didn't really locate that, but I'll keep looking for future reference for some people who actually grew up there during the formative years. Although I think it pretty quickly deteriorated from its theme, whatever it became. By the mid 30s, I believe there would have been just a whisper of a memory of the whole Moorish theme. You know, I don't think that water tower was ever built. Did anybody know? I know they planned it.
One thing that I remember seeing when I looked at the plat, that you know the remaining plat of Aladdin City was that maybe not on that plat, but there's something that jogs my memory. Quite a bit of that land was, they issued another plat and they erased what was originally Aladdin City and it went back to the original land configuration.
Yeah, the eastern section.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, the eastern section was completely unbuilt.
Okay.
And so all of that, there was never any Sovereign Boulevard.
Right.
And they worked first on the western section, and they never even completed the circle.
Right.
So,
Along Farm Life Road. Yeah. Well, it was very typical of a whole bunch of developments of that era. I mean, there was just hundreds of real estate people and thumping the drum, and like you said earlier, people made lots and lots and lots of money, and there was a lot of people left holding the bag. You know, so but that was very typical from that era, and to be honest, it's still typical.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Selling the dream.
Yeah.
I think what was most unique about Aladdin was that they were a soup to nuts company. They weren't just selling you land. They were finishing it off in a day, and you walk in and turn on the lights. I mean, to me, that's one of the most fascinating things, is that was such an audacious theme for them. That once they had these 5-6 factories where they could put together these, and they had really excellent architects and designers and draftsmen and stuff, and they put together things that really worked, you know. And when they delivered it to you, it was ready to go, and that was kind of where they stood out, I think, from some of the others. George Merrick wasn't promising you anything for a home in Coral Gables. It was the lot and the amenities that he was focused on that would draw you in there. And I think also Mr. Young in Hollywood, what was his first name? I can't remember. And he was doing the same thing in the same era, presenting a paradise that you could move your family into and have a wonderful life. But this again was the soup to nuts thing, and I think that's what's unique.
I just sent you copies of those two maps.
Okay.
You should have it if you want. You can display it if you want to. But
Did you email those?
yeah, I just emailed them to you.
Okay.
Yeah, Rob, you mentioned Young. I think it was, I'm going to say it was James. I'm not sure, but there was a man by the name of Stephen M. Alsobrook who sold that land to Young, and that's where he Alsobrook bought, that was in Dania, and
Yeah.
Alsobrook made a bundle selling it to James Young, and Alsobrook was in Homestead. There was the Alsobrook Arcade, and he also built the central filling station at Second and Chrome. And
Yeah, we had a member for many years, Sonny Alsobrook. Who remembers Sonny? That's got to be a connection there, right?
could very well be.
Yeah.
It's not a very common name, but Alsobrook had a real palatial residence in Weaverville, which is near Asheville, off to the west of Asheville.
Yeah.
He there was just countless real estate operators making tons and tons of money. There's I know that the Frank Lindman, who built the Lindman Residence, and Frank knows all about that house. He made
Beautiful house. Beautiful house.
he made $100,000 in like 6 months by selling property in Boca Chica down in the Keys.
And imagine what 100,000 was back in those days.
Oh, absolutely. There were millionaires all over the place back then. It was quite a, what I find interesting about the discussion in this era, and it goes to Miami, it goes to the whole of Dayton, all of Southeast Florida, people talk about the boom in real estate. And they think that it happened like in 1922, 23, 24. That's not true. It started in 1896 when railroad came to Miami. It's just, in 1912, when the Bank of Homestead was built, there was only 500 people in Homestead. So I asked myself, well, why do you have a bank with 500 people? Well, you had a bank to finance the real estate speculation. It's just.
Right. And it was also catch-22, because who's going to move there if they don't have a bank? So you have schools and stores and banks and a hotel, and then people think, well, there's a critical mass of infrastructure here. I'll
That's
move
true.
there. So you sort of have to, have that
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah, that's very true. But I just thought that, a town of 500 people's got a bank, really? No.
But that boom really burst in 1926 after the hurricane.
Oh yeah.
So many people were penniless, and
Oh yeah.
at that point.
Well, I think a lot of people, although, somehow justified that, well, we'll rebuild it. But I think when the Depression hit, that was it, But
Yeah.
there was the area between the hurricane and the Depression being official was
Right.
still a little bit hopeful.
But this
Who were trying to recover their money.
was like 1926 was as bad for Southeast Florida as the Depression was for the whole country.
Right.
The only thing is it was more concentrated in that area because of the hurricane. My grandfather had a lot of money that he had made, selling building supplies to people building houses in Homestead, in Redland district in that time. And it was in different banks in Homestead and in Coral Gables, Coconut Grove. And all of them closed and said, we don't have any money to give you. So he was really without any funds to continue business.
So as careful as he was to spread it out, it didn't matter.
Right.
It's
It's remarkable that he didn't go bankrupt. It really is. A lot of people paid him in land. So he ended up with a grove. He ended up with housing that, nobody would do anything with. And some of it, one house that he owned in Parvenir on 20th Street, he eventually gave to my mother and father to build a home on. And that was the first time that property was available, had any use since 1926. The building had been partly damaged. And then looters, of course, had taken stuff out of it over the years. So it's useless. They bulldozed it and then built a new house there. But it's a wonderful lot. That whole Parvenir district on Northwest 19th to 23rd Street
Yeah.
is a beautifully laid out area and with
Yeah, and
sidewalks and wide
20th Street,
avenues.
20th Street is so wide, it looks like it was planned to be a grand boulevard, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was going to be like a parkway, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But any rate, that's just a microcosm there in Homestead, but it was going on all over and nobody had any money. It just disappeared with the hurricane.
Well, there's a really interesting book was written by a man by the name of Vickers. It's about the financing and the bankruptcies, and I can't think of the name of it right at the moment, but it's quite long. It's a scholarly book. It's got lots of footnotes in it, and he basically pinned it down to who was the gentleman that did the work in Boca Raton? It was famous.
Yeah, Meisner.
Meisner, yeah. He pins the blame on Meisner, because Meisner had all these grandiose schemes, and that was the beginning of it. I mean, it just collapsed after Meisner collapsed.
And people lost their confidence in all of these hucksters, if you will, right? The huckster is all real until it collapses, isn't it?
Well,
Exactly. So it was a Ponzi scheme, And
I see that Juan has his hand up.
and there were all sorts of things going over on the West Coast, like in Naples and Fort Myers, in that whole area. They were selling, real swamp land.
Yeah,
that's
right.
underwater most of the year, but in the wintertime it might be dry. So they sell this land. And so people.
There was a lot of property like that before they built the canal system.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Juan. Juan, you had your hand up. I think you're muted, Juan. I can't hear you. Maybe he's coming back. I think he might have had a problem with his audio. So we'll wait for a second for him here, see if we get Juan back.
So while you're doing that, you could put those maps up. So
Yeah, let me share the map. Let's see. Oops, I don't want to do that.
So this is after they, I guess they merged with the plant railroads, because you see they join.
Yeah.
And the other
Yeah,
one,
right there. I think they're right there below Gainesville. You see, that's Wildwood.
yeah,
And that's where I think there was an interchange there.
probably so. And that's why Wildwood is, I guess the turnpike followed the
It
seaboard.
basically did, didn't it? When you look at that, yeah.
Right. I don't know whether right of way was easier along it or not, but looks like the turnpike pretty much followed it.
That's an interesting observation. They probably did. Yeah.
It would have made sense that the land was cleared for that and that a path was set and,
Nobody wants to live right next to the railroad anyway. It's noisy and,
Well, also it may have been that building materials for the road itself were conveniently moved along on the railway as well. Who knows?
Is the railroad right there next to the turnpike still, or did the turnpike obliterate it? Anybody know? Anybody pay any attention when they're going up?
I know it's since the 80s, it's all still there. I'm not sure. I know that they're still active with the train that comes out of the chrome concrete factory. It goes 136th Street and then into the airport. But the southern spur south of the Railroad Museum and the zoo is not being used, as far as I know. There's no more customers. You had some customers down here still, like the fertilizer factory. What is it, Atlantic Fertilizer or something? And
yeah,
and a few of of course, everything comes in trucks now.
Correct.
So you could argue that we didn't need that. I keep wondering now what's going to happen with this because now when I walk the neighborhood, you know, three houses down from me is the railroad track for the seaboard is just totally overgrown and out of control. And I believe that, you know, there's some rule out there that if you want to maintain your right of way, you got to maintain your right of way. And so I wonder what's happening. I wouldn't be surprised if we make a deal with the county to make it into a linear park or God forbid, a mass transit leg or something, you know.
I think there's something in the works up, but you know, my understanding is that it's been abandoned by the seaboard. You know, it's just,
Well, if not officially, it certainly has virtually.
yeah.
You can't even find the tracks anymore. It's all so grown up.
Mhm.
Now there's an area right by, ironically, the railroad nursery where they keep it all, you know, mowed themselves because they have property on both sides of the railroad track. I guess they want to be able to see each other, you know, but the rest of it has pretty much all gone to hell south of the zoo or down to 136, where that, you know, there's a spur that goes out west to Chrome at 136th Street and then goes north into that cement plant. Are we getting a little stretched far from Aladdin City here? I don't know. We could talk about things that go on forever. I'm going to say I'm going to say this will be the end of the recording portion of the story of Aladdin City, and we'll stop recording, and then we can just keep talking. So if you will, I'll say thanks to everybody for coming for this part of the presentation about Aladdin City, and it'll be online if you want to share it with your friends. So thanks.